I'm Akos, the CEO of Airtime. Airtime is an autonomous product discovery platform which turns all your customer calls into product insights. In this current episode, I'm going to talk to Daniel D'Souza, VP Growth at Voiceflow. And Daniel, I think you're the best person to say a bit more about yourself and Voiceflow. So let's kick it off and give us a short intro, please.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. So my name is Daniel. I'm the head of growth at Voiceflow. And so really what that means is that I oversee all of our self-serve revenue, our community, and really activation. So as customers sign up for Voiceflow, making sure that they get to the point of value, and that's customers across the segment, right? Whether they're smaller companies and they're a better fit for our self-serve plans, or whether they're from larger companies and are a better fit for our enterprise plan. And so really kind of building that PLG motion and making sure that we've got a good funnel from customers that are finding us, starting off, and then kind of self-selecting on the plan that they see best fit. And so just to give you a sense too, Voiceflow is the best tool to build complex AI agents with your team. So imagine if kind of Figma's design canvas met a powerful production and integration platform. And so if you want to build an AI agent that can pull customer information, combine it with your documentation, use custom large language models to provide an answer to customers, that's really where Voiceflow is really good at.
Amazing. Thanks a lot. And the reason we're here today is just because the other week I saw a post from you on the activation topic, which really got started me thinking. And in particular, you mentioned two topics that in the past months you were interested and driven to understand, like what are some of the areas where Voiceflow is 10 times better than competitors, and for who is Voiceflow critical in your customer base. So I'd like to focus on these two topics today. And I think to start things off, how about explaining a little bit your methodology and approach to identify where Voiceflow excels compared to competitors or other solutions?
Yeah, for sure. And to kind of give some more light to this too, I'll give a bit of background in terms of what happened over the past 2 years. So we've been in this space for about just over 5 years now. Really kind of focusing before the big AI craze with ChatGPT on teams that were building conversational assistants. And so this was a lot of larger enterprises. So customers like JP Morgan, Home Depot, PayPal, Intuit, BMW, who were building all variety of what were effectively AI agents, whether that was over the phone, whether that was their chat, whether that was in car, like BMW. And so we would actually really focusing in on those teams that were building and provide them that canvas that they could actually build on and then launch to production with. And so we've been in this space for a long time. What really kind of focused more on the enterprise side, because prior to ChatGPT, to build a really good AI agent, like you needed a team of like 20 plus people. And so that's where Voiceflow was. And that was only in the enterprise side, because who else could afford to have a team just dedicated to that? And then last year, it was kind of nuts, right? With the like large language models getting a lot better, with ChatGPT taking over the world. It went from, you need a team of 20 people to build something really powerful to you need a team of one person, maybe two people to build something really powerful, leveraging a lot of these large language models. And so our market really expanded from what was just enterprise teams to SMB companies, mid-market companies. And it went from, a really core use case, which was around customer support and customer automation, to like every use case under the sun. And so we saw a huge amount of growth last year in our own customer base, especially in our self-serve segment, which had been a lot smaller before, and then now became almost like 40 to 50% of our revenue, and it's continuing to grow. And so within that, with our market expanding, with use cases expanding, it became a lot tougher, I think, to figure out, like, okay, within this new world now, like, is it the same value prop? Technology has changed, the world has changed, our customers are evolving, use cases are evolving. How do we narrow down and figure out, in this new world, what are we 10x better at? And it was a question that like kind of our board actually asked to us too. And sometimes you're so lost in your own product that, you're thinking in the product, and it's tough to kind of put yourself in the mind of like new customers that you're getting to figure out like what are they getting. And so
and I guess as with the boost of all these new customers, you got like also diverging requirements from these sub segments, right? So make it even more difficult to figure out what is exactly that differentiates you.
Exactly, right. And I think this is where it came to, because initially our value prop was getting to market faster. Because we were working with large enterprise teams, and they were working with like either just purely in code or in like really clunky softwares. So having this like collaborative design canvas that could then launch right to production sped up the time to market significantly. And that was the kind of value prop that we had stuck with. But what we started realizing was that like that may not actually be true anymore, because now it's really easy to get to market with an AI agent. And so we were trying to figure out like where, like, what is Voiceflow really good at? Because we had so many customers that were using us, sticking with us, growing with us, but the world had changed. And so I think our value prop had changed as well. And so um, we knew that customer support was like the most clear cut business use case out of all these use cases. It's kind of where we cut our teeth and where we see customers spending the most today. But even within that, we were like, how has this now changed? And so what we did is we actually launched like a survey to all of our users after 30 days. So as soon as you hit 30 days on the platform and you're still active, send over a survey, and we're like, how critical is Voiceflow to your use case or business? Because now we had so many different use cases, so many different businesses, we had to figure out what the difference was. And it was on a scale of 1 to 10. And the results I thought were like pretty surprising. Like after 30 days, right, you kind of filter out all the users who couldn't figure out your platform, didn't really get the value, and left. And you're stuck with everyone who's still building. And usually you would think that all of these people are here because it's critical. But what we found is it was actually like a 60-40 split, right? 60% of them were like, yes, like out of 9 or 10, Voiceflow is extremely critical to my business or use case. Like I would be so pissed if it wasn't there, like I would be able to do something. And 40% were kind of like a spread across, right? Like 6, 7s, like, yeah, it's pretty critical. And so that's where I was like, this is a good signal for us that there's definitely some clear value prop happening, and we need to get better at actually defining that for them. And so I went in and kind of looked at a lot of the user sessions and user projects and what people were building. And there was a pretty clear difference between the two groups. So in the group that was critical, in the first 30 days, they were spending like insane amounts of time in the tool, like hours and hours and hours and hours each day. And the assistants they were building were like very high complexity. And, going outside of just the product lens, thinking about the customer, it was really clear that these customers were spending a lot of time because they valued a highly personalized, highly complex answer for a customer question. And so some of the stuff we saw was that like customers were kind of building, flows that basically did very similar things. So it would pull information about the customer. So imagine a customer opens up, chatbot, they're going to talk to you. Rather than just treating them like anyone else, it was pulling information about who they are, what plan they're on, what kind of actions they've done in the tool, and really kind of classifying them to a different group, right? Are they a power user, developer, non-developer, etc.? Then it was being able to use that and hit specific data sources. So out of all their documentation, what information do they want to pull? And then it was actually doing a lot of checks to be like, is this the right information? Is this information high quality? And then using custom large language models, depending on the type of user, with custom prompts in there to give them an answer that was extremely personalized to them. And you compare that with customers on the other side who had much simpler flows, right? It was kind of just like anyone sign in, we just give them an answer. The tools are a lot less complex. And so that was our first signal that it's like, oh, there are customers who really, really value a highly personalized response for their customers. And, time to market isn't actually the biggest driver for them because they were spending way more time building out these initial flows. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of what was that initial signal to be like, okay, there's something here that we can dive a bit deeper into.
And so if I can paraphrase it, what I heard is you had like a mixed methods approach where you ran surveys with customers, then you segmented based on answers. You looked at then actual product usage, so analytics data. What exactly do people do who gave you a 9 or 10 on the scale? And you also got some like qualitative, like from
Yeah.
interviews, like any additional stuff.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
am
And
I
so we did.
am I putting words in your mouth? You tell me if I'm.
No, that was the biggest part, right? Because like we could see what was
Yeah.
different on the product side, but for the actual like customer value, that's where we had to talk to customers. And so the biggest one was like one of our core customers, Trilogy. So we have a case study with them, but they were automating like over 60% of their customer support. And we found that like their project actually looked really similar to all these customers who were doing like 9 and 10 on the use case value. And so when we went and talked to them, we realized that support automation is one thing, but it wasn't just like there's actually different layers within support. So you've got like your L1 tickets, which is like your basic questions, right? Like this is what AI is really good at automating. Any tool can do this. A lot of customers today are actually using tools like Zendesk and Intercom and a bunch of other ones to do these. We found that with Trilogy, what was interesting is they were actually that 60% was actually focused on L2. So these are the tickets that, they're like the 20-30% of tickets that you can't really automate because they require a lot of customer information and knowledge about the product. And they take
Yeah.
a long time to figure out answers to, but they're very high value. And so this is actually where they were spending a lot of their time automating and where they saw the biggest business value. So for us, even within customer support, you start to segment it out further, right? So it's Voiceflow is really good for people who want to automate customer support, who have like highly complex questions that are unable to be done today with kind of basic tools. And so that's where we started segmenting and being like, okay, cool. Like, there's now customers who have complex products that have users that need answers to these questions that Voiceflow is actually 10x better for than any other customer support automation tool on the market. And it's so important and valuable to these customers that they're spending like tens and like hundreds of hours in some cases in the tool, like designing the perfect flow for this. And then when they launch, it doesn't stop there. There's a continuous iteration cycle of like evaluating how the tool's performing, optimizing it, and seeing that number go from like 30% automated to 60% automated to like now kind of approaching 80% automated. So that's where we started realizing the value is here. And I've also started kind of doing a lot of interviews with any customer that says 9 or 10, automatically send them an invite to an user interview, hop on a call with them. And we're starting to see like a very similar trend across that.
Yeah, I have a question about this group, like the nine or tens.
Yeah.
How homogeneous is it? Because are these because I understand that their usage may be similar, but I
Yeah.
can imagine that they are potentially very different company sizes, very different verticals.
Mhm.
How fragmented is that underneath?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the one of the challenges I think with Voiceflow is, right, we're a platform that you can build on top of. And so because of that, you can build like a ton of different use cases. And so we see stuff like customer support is obviously the kind of core one, but then we see stuff popping up in like retail, like pre-sale. We see stuff like internal tools. We see like sales automation. And so there's a lot of different use cases. But within this 9 to 10, like I think what was really clear was that the majority of them were doing a customer support use case because that's where the clearest value is. There were actually like a group within here that didn't fit that profile. Like they had more simple projects. They weren't the same style. They were still complex in their own right, but they were for newer and emerging use cases. So a lot of the stuff I was talking about, like on like the retail side, etc. And I think the reality is that like some of these new use cases are new, and so the baseline for them is quite low. And so customers are kind of finding solutions for them that didn't exist before. But for us, like we found that the willingness to pay, especially from larger companies, is really in that customer support because it's very established, it's a very clear ROI. And so that's where we're focusing on today. But in terms of like we're already seeing customers that do this in customer support are then like, I'm now expanding this to the pre-sale side, the sales side, like everywhere where they see automation opportunities in their business. And so for us, it's like customer support is that entry point. And then we're seeing it kind of expand horizontally into these other use cases. But I think that those use cases will also grow over time to get to a point of complexity that we're seeing on the support side. And so that was kind of how we segmented it. But willingness to pay and like the clearness of like what the ROI is was really important factor for us to narrow down on one thing.
Yeah, it's I have like a question on this topic, also looking into the future because it's a topic that you recently like opened up and discussed and launched. Let's just say you launched a project on this. And I'm wondering with all the AI solutions out there growing like mushrooms, and a
Yeah.
lot of things are possible, as you also mentioned earlier, without a huge team, just as a one man show. Um, how long do you think these differentiate the things that you're 10x better at, are they bulletproof, and how
Yeah.
frequently do you need to validate and check this? What's your expectation, at least,
Yeah.
for the near future?
Very good question. So it's one thing that's interesting about like this being in this like AI agent space is that like it's constantly evolving. But the way that we're seeing it happen is that the floor is lifting. So like, how quickly it is for you to get to initial value, how quickly it is for you to get to like a response that's good, becomes easier and easier over time. But the thing that we're seeing isn't changing is that regardless of how good these models are, customers need to be able to like apply business logic on top of them and then have guardrails over certain workflows that are really sensitive. So stuff like processing payments, stuff like handling really sensitive customer data. And so what we're seeing is that like there's this niche that's unchanging in this kind of really advanced space where even if the models get a lot better, customers still really need to be able to put like guardrails on their assistant and create like really like add more complexity and business logic to their flows. And so I think this is always evolving. And even for us too, what's interesting is that this actually helps a lot on the activation side. Because as these models get better, we can get customers up to the point of value of like, is this able to answer my questions at a degree that I'm really happy with? And then for us, we can focus on like that differentiated value, which is cool. Like, you've gone to value. Now what's the next step that makes Voiceflow amazing is that I'm able to apply all of my business logic, my business rules on top of this. And so
Yeah.
to kind of answer your question, it's always evolving as the space is evolving. But what's really nice is that it's actually allowing us to focus a lot more on like, what is the thing that is unchanging and where are we seeing like that differentiated value across like the AI stack. And for Voiceflow too, we really consider ourselves like a platform or like a horizontal solution. So rather than a vertical solution, which is like, let's just stick with customer support and let's just do everything end to end, we actually focus on like one specific part of that, which is like the complexity and like the automation side. And so even when we build our product, it's kind of a balancing act where, we're productizing the things that can make this use case a lot easier, but we're doing it in a way where we prioritize like customizability and flexibility first, where we'll build something, we'll expose the API for it, we'll see what customers are using, and then we'll say, like, let's productize this one specific thing. But because we've exposed the API, like, customers can build all these different use cases today. And then as we see those use cases getting more and more important, then we'll say, cool, let's productize this next one and this next one. So I don't know if that answered the question, but it's a bit of a balancing act and you're kind of always evolving and learning.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and that's is exactly what I would have expected in this dynamic industry. That it's not just a one-off project, but it's something that you continuously need to have a finger on the pulse and understand how user needs, and as well as like competitors bringing new features on the market. So you got to be aware of how attractive your offering is relative to what's new that is coming to the market.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we've started saying too, and this is kind of like, where the longer term vision of Voiceflow is that, Voiceflow is becoming more and more of a kind of orchestration platform where it sits between your front end and all of your like back end services and systems. And so, it allows us to focus on doing one thing really well, which is like allowing you to design that complexity and connect to where you want information from and kind of coordinate all these responses between your tools, right? Like, grab information from the user from here, combine it with information from here, like apply your business logic, leverage these custom LLMs for this use case, different ones for this use case, and then provide that back to user. And then like where we focus on is saying like, let's just be the orchestration layer where we're handling the conversation, we're remembering all the states, and we're actually saying like, okay, when user is here, we want you to hit these services. And so it allows us to kind of, I think, like carve out a niche within a really rapidly evolving ecosystem. And rather than try to compete with everyone in the ecosystem, like evolve alongside them.
That makes absolute sense. I have a last topic that I want to bring to you, and I guess I have to invite you again in the show in a few months from now to hear your experience on this, because you run a survey, somebody answers 9 or 10. What you're doing is critical for them, but also companies change. Do you have like any sort of like health check, leading indicators that keep you posted if you're still as critical for a client as you used to be when you ran the survey?
Yeah. So there's two things that we really look at that are like really clear indicators, and both of them are like with everything is qualitative and quantitative data, right? So this is like on the quant side. And then from there, we'll obviously layer on qualitative data on top. But the two big indicators are like, for their initial use case, is it being leveraged more in production? So are we seeing the production interactions increase? And then the second one is, are we seeing customers actually build more, right? Are they building more on top of that use case, or are they starting to build more in other use cases? Because really with like how quickly the AI automation space is growing and how many use cases are growing, if we're providing that critical value to customers, they're deepening that core use case and then they're expanding to new ones. And if we aren't doing that, then it's likely that we kind of either maybe they're not just a great fit for Voiceflow and they don't have as many use cases to automate, or we're not hitting the threshold where they're like, wow, I can do more and I can build more. And so, something we're figuring out as we go, but those are really two key indicators for us. And then it's obviously around like the business value as well. Something that we've kind of been learning more about is just like, once we see like the clear ROI, right? So for like customer support, it's around like automation. How do we also track that in the tool and then display it to customers so we can actually measure the value they're getting within the tool itself. And so that's something we're also kind of playing around with and trying to understand, like, what does that look like for us when it comes to these really kind of complex use cases, and how does that scale across multiple
Yeah.
use cases? So bit of we're figuring it out.
Yeah, and whenever let's pick a customer, just an imaginary one, which signed up, you're critical, but then over the course of the next month, you know that they're stagnating. They're not creating new use cases. Is there an action plan that you follow to activate that customer? And whatever you can share in terms of approaches or tips would be extremely valuable.
Yeah, it's a good one. Actually going to lean back on on the enterprise side. So when I first joined Voiceflow, I was actually brought in to build out our like enterprise customer success program. So post sale, we were selling to our first customer like JP Morgan. What do we do after that? And so a big thing that we found was that with a platform like Voiceflow, there really is like no ceiling, or there's a very high ceiling in terms of what you can do. Because of the way that we've designed it, it's like super flexible, and that's the whole like value prop with it. And so a lot of the times we find that when a customer stops building or stops experimenting, it's typically either an activation problem or like a resourcing problem. And the activation problem is in like, have they reached a point where they're getting enough value on their baseline and they're seeing the value in like continuing to build? And also is that important for them? Like, have we found the right customer who has this problem where they have an insanely high volume of customer support, so even doing 1 or 2% more is millions of saved? And so that's one thing, is like, have we activated them properly? And the next one is like, does this team actually have the resources to then go that extra mile? Like, you can get to pretty good value in Voiceflow without any developers, but to really get the most value out of Voiceflow, you need a technical team, or like a developer, someone who's at least technical minded to work with you, to work with our APIs and kind of build custom solutions on top. And a lot of the times that's like the biggest blocker. And so the real challenge is then like, how do we make sure that we're finding the right champions in the business to see the potential of what they can do with Voiceflow, and then getting them involved in the tool and kind of making them a core part of this. And so it's usually one of those two. It's like, are they activated? Do they see the value? And then do they have the resources to actually get that value out of it? And if it's not one of those two, then we may not actually have the right customer, which also happens, right? It's that maybe customer support isn't a big pain point for them because their volumes are too low. So there is no, outsized value if you're incrementing that by a couple more percent. So that's something that we kind of like pay attention to as well.
Amazing. Daniel, I'm grateful for all the wisdom and all the examples that you shared. It was extremely insightful. I wish you and Voiceflow the best of luck. Continue your trajectory from last year. And I hope to see you back on this show and sometime in the future and learn more from you.
Yeah. Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me on. It's always an evolving journey. I mean, like, just a little plug if anyone wants to learn more. Like, I post a lot about this on LinkedIn as well. I'm just kind of just like posting as we learn. But this is a pretty crazy space that's changing, like, I swear, every day. So there's a lot of learning as we go through this as well.
Yeah. I follow Daniel, by the way, on LinkedIn. He has really good posts, so I can recommend that to everyone. I think that's a nice final note here. Daniel, it was my pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, Akos.
Thanks so much.